And so in 2020, I set up the Heritage Party. And the first thing I did with that was stand to be the London mayor and to get back on the London Assembly. And Nick, I'm exactly the same as you. It's incredible you say that because, yeah, it was the same for me. I was brought up with my mother. She did everything she could for me. She was wonderful, absolutely. But I didn't have a father.
Family. Just like me, you were raised by a single mum. And I'm presuming some of your views come out of that. I didn't realize I missed having a father in the home until I was well in my 20s. And then I started realizing there was things I didn't know. There was the dreams and aspirations I didn't have because I didn't have someone telling me how to be a man, showing me how to be a man. I had to learn it all myself. And I wasted decades of my life. I could have been a lot further on in my life now if I would have had that support. Was that your experience? And if not, why is family so important?
No, Nick, I'm exactly the same as you. It's incredible you say that because yeah, it was the same for me. I was brought up with my mother. She did everything she could for me. She was wonderful, absolutely. But I didn't have a father, so I didn't have a man in the home teaching me how to be a man. And teaching me all those kind of masculine things. Like you, I had to figure things out on my own. I didn't even realize that there was a big gap in my life until I was in my 30s, actually, later than you, realizing that actually, what my experience was not normal. This is not how things should normally be. So, yeah, I've had to sort of figure out things as I've gone along, and now I'm 53 and, I wish I'd known some of the things now that I've figured out on my own back when I was 18 or 20 or 21, because I'd have probably gone a lot faster through life, if you like, made some money, made some more career advancements and all that kind of thing, But so, I very much support the traditional family, and a lot of that comes from my Christian faith as well. I believe that marriage is a man and a woman, and outside Christianity, just from secular studies, show that that's the best model of a family for outcomes for children on every measure you can think of. I mean, children from a stable family with a married mother and father do better in education, better in employment, have more stable relationships, lower self-harm, lower drug abuse, lower depression, lower suicide. I mean, it's fantastic. And that's not to disparage anybody who finds themselves in a different situation just because of the unfortunate circumstances of life. But we need to honor that and affirm that as the best possible bedrock of society, which is going to bring up the healthiest, most wholesome, well-adjusted children. And if we stray from that, which we haven't done passively, this country's actively gone away from that over the last 50 years. It's going to cause all kinds of trouble. And we see that trouble now on multiple fronts. So we need to affirm the traditional family again.
Yeah, I mean, I've spent 2 decades working with young people, especially young lads, on the streets across Greater Manchester, in connection with the council, in connection with the police. And that was one of my big red flags, is if a kid told me he had no father at home. The second red flag was he's failing at education. And they would, if them two came together, it's like, we've got to work with this kid because he's on the road to nowhere here. But you're right, since post Second World War, it's not that we've ignored the family. Our governments, every government since the Second World War, has seemed to want to destroy the family unit as if that's the problem, as if the 100,000 years of our species living in tight family units didn't teach us any lessons. And suddenly we get a bit of Marxism and postmodernism, and we think we know better than 100,000 years of history and we can rewrite everything. And our society shows we can't. Crime's out of control. 80% of prisoners come from single parent households. Our failing education, our failing communities, the destruction of the family, and 20% of women are on antidepressants. Men are killing themselves. And it's like, none of this is working, is it?
No, no, you're absolutely right. It's dreadful, and it's not. It's insane. to go away from what has naturally been the case for thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years, and thinking that suddenly we're going to change everything and create this brave new world, underpinned by cultural Marxist ideology, which is destroying everything. And this is specifically in the Communist Manifesto written by Marx and supported by Engels in 1848, which is, when people follow this, it leads to chaos and destruction, because there's four things that the Communist Manifesto says need to be eradicated so that we can have this wonderful new world of social justice, which never comes into being. They want to abolish the family, the nation, property, and Christianity. Those four things. We get rid of one of them, it causes problems. We get rid of all four, it's absolute chaos and disaster. But then you have people coming in saying, as we have done over the last 4 years, we're going to build back better. We're going to build this brave new world, envisioned by Klaus Schwab, where you will own nothing and be happy, which is a complete inversion, because no one's going to own anything, of course, but no one's going to be happy either, because everything that gives us meaning and purpose and stability and connection has been destroyed. You destroy the family, you've got no connection to your parents, your brothers, your sisters, your future, your past. You destroy the nation, you've got no connection to the people around you. You destroy the idea of private property and say that everything's going to be owned by the state. Well, you have no stake in anything in society. You're basically a serf with no rights, no freedom, no power. And then, of course, Christianity is our faith. And, if you adhere to the principles of Christianity, countries that have done that through 2,000 years have done very, very well. And countries that haven't, we see, have not done so well. And we see clearly the West is abandoning Christianity and Christian principles, and we're going down the tubes. So, I would say, along with freedom, family, nation, we need to get back to our Christian heritage as well, which underpins everything and gives us the principles, the value system, which holds everything together.
I would like to force I mean, this sounds a bit dictatorial, but I'd like to force everybody in the country at some point in their life to work for government. Because once you've worked for government, you've been inoculated for the Marxist virus. Because I've spent a decade working for Manchester Council. Once you've done that, you realise you want the council and the government doing nothing for you. It's pure incompetence. It's pure politics. They do nothing correctly. They waste money. And once you've worked for government, it's like, I don't want them anywhere in my life because I can do better than that. So if we talk about government,
Sorry, I'll just come in on that, Nick. I mean, I totally agree with you, but I think the problem is that there are actually millions of people who work for government and are very, very comfortable, because they don't do hardly anything. They don't have to perform, but then they get a nice salary check every month. Their pay goes up higher than it does in the private sector, and they get a nice pension for basically swanning around on their backsides doing nothing of value every day, and that is a big problem.
that's actually an excellent point, and which has blown my point out the water, because I worked with hundreds of people in the council who thought they were doing a great job, who thought the world would end if they weren't doing their job of pushing papers. So I'll edit that out of what I just said there, because it made no sense.